name is Bond. James Bond.
My name is Chow. Ben Chow.
เป็นเจ้า
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We are your hosts, Jordan and Kumar. That's me.
And me.
And this week we are talking about Meng Bo, also known as Mr. Mumble.
Yep.
Also known as Ciity Hunter.
Correct. I found that too.
In some places.
I think the US release was called Ciity Hunter.
I wonder how that works, because this is an unofficial... It's like we got a hardware type of situation here, where they just made a Ciity Hunter movie without asking for permission.
Yep.
So how, in the release, could they have released it in the US as Ciity Hunter if they didn't have...
It didn't have an official release, I imagine. So it would have just been on home media, I imagine. They branded it as Ciity Hunter.
Yeah, and in fact, when I went to the IMDb page, all of the characters are listed by their Ciity Hunter names.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Didn't have their Chinese names.
No.
Which caused me some confusion and trouble.
Cognitive dissonance?
Well, trouble when I was trying to assign actress to characters and stuff. I was like, which actor is this?
Which one's Cowdy and which one's...
Yes.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. Which an interesting choice too, since it's an unofficial... But
IMDb is all edited by people. It's just like Wikipedia, right?
Is because the characters all have this, as far as I can tell, in the film, they have their official names, but just in Cantonese.
Yes. So
Mumble is Ryubo basically in Cantonese.
Oh, so all I was going on was the Chinese Wikipedia page with the auto translate on.
Oh, I didn't even get to that. That's
the info. There's one paragraph under the Ciity Hunter section, the Chinese Ciity Hunter page. You'll find one paragraph about this movie.
Yeah.
So it's listed on there. It's on the Ciity Hunter fan page, like the fan wiki.
Yes.
Lists this movie. It's included. They haven't dismissed it.
I noticed that. Yeah.
I did wonder for slightly, because I think I mentioned in the Jackie Chan week that there was a movie called Savior of the Soul, which we kind of had a bit of back and forth about. And that was really unofficial. It was from 1991.
That's right. I've looked it up. It looks wacky as anything. It looks like a wuxia, like a martial arts movie, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's full of, crazy techniques, sword fighting.
Wire work?
I don't know about wire work,
okay.
But, people are inventing techniques and deploying the techniques against one another.
Huh.
Someone invents the shadowless gun or the sleeping bullets, and it's like rock paper scissors kind of martial arts idea that you match the styles.
Yeah.
And it seems that they've adapted the Angel Dust storyline from Volume 1.
Okay.
Where some evil doctor has invented the horrible medicine which turns you into a horrible angel if you're exposed to it. And then you become, I think, a sort of an automaton, and you can be ordered about. Anyway, this movie sounds crazy.
Yeah.
And I don't know, if there's fan demand, maybe we could do 5 weeks of Ciity Hunter.
I did think I did consider putting it on the list. It might go on the list for a later date, but I did think
5 weeks would be a lot.
We're kind of getting into like those Asylum knockoff movies like Metal Man and The Incredible Bulk and movies like that. We might be skirting a line.
That's true. On the other hand, that's true. But on the other hand, we get to read more Ciity Hunter, so that's a positive.
That is true as well. So I guess we should have a little... So as I said, there are 3 names for this movie: Mr. Mumble, Meng Bo, and Ciity Hunter.
Yes. Or Ciity Hunter 2.
Or Ciity Hunter 2, yes. Some places listed as Ciity Hunter 2.
5 names.
You can find it on YouTube. There's the Cantonese version is on YouTube with English subtitles. Just went up a few weeks ago.
And that's right. That's right. Just a few weeks ago, I watched that version. Yeah. The subtitles are literal.
Yeah.
So I was watching this again with Vannie, with my wife, who speaks Cantonese fluently, and she was very happy with the subtitles.
Oh, good.
Because they were very exact.
Okay, good. On Archive, I found a Mandarin version with what I thought were better English subtitles, but sometimes I put them... Actually, I overlaid the subtitles on the Cantonese one as well.
Yeah.
And they're mostly pretty close.
Okay.
Except for a few bits I don't know. We'll see. But
Well,
my
this
point
is your
is,
area of expertise,
Yeah.
but I mean, in the Cantonese movie, they don't feel very natural. It's
Yeah.
much more literal than natural.
Yeah.
So it will be saying things that sound really odd, yet is a accurate representation of the original Cantonese
Right.
dialogue. And Vannie was going, yeah, that's exactly what they said.
yeah. Okay. So I'm kind of working up to pause the podcast
Yes.
here because even if you want to watch this movie, it's a little bit tricky to find. It took me some digging, and because it's got the 3 names, you got to go into archive, you got to go into YouTube, you got to look for all 3 names, and then you'll
Good point.
it's
So,
out there. But
in other words, don't pause the podcast. I mean,
there are we are going to have some spoilers here
Sure.
because there are a couple of plot twists
yeah, yes.
and reveals. Mm-hmm. So
All right.
I don't think they're that big a deal. Maybe.
My instinct would be to say, don't bother pausing
Okay.
the podcast.
Okay.
But if you're really determined to watch this movie, because this is definitely the most accurate adaptation
Yes,
of
in some
Ciity
ways,
Hunter
yeah.
that we've yet had, at least in terms of how you prefer your adaptations, which is in terms of
Yeah.
reproductive accuracy. I would say this is
Yeah.
probably the closest to the original manga that we've yet had. Although we can come back to this.
Yeah, let's come back to that. So, read Volume 3 this week. Again, it's a fan translation. Some events that happen here are that Sayaka, the girl he was protecting,
Yep.
for some reason IMDb gives her his name is Yuki. And I looked up Yuki in City Hunter, and Yuki was another young girl that he's hired to bodyguard in Volume 8.
Oh, okay. So that's an
And
error clue.
she's the daughter of some rich dude. She's not the daughter of a gangster.
Okay.
As Sayaka is.
Okay.
Now, I don't remember why he was hired to bodyguard Sayaka exactly in Volume 2. I think she hated Yakuza. She hated gangsters.
Yes.
She didn't have anything to do with her father's men.
That's right.
And she needed protection for some reason, which I can't remember. Maybe it wasn't stated.
Well, no, it was stated. It was because the Yakuza were in conflict with that
Oh, the biker gang.
South American... No, the South American...
Oh, that's right.
outfit.
The Teope
Teope...
cartel, yes.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Or union, as they call it in
Yes.
the translation.
But then we had the problem with the biker gang.
But then it turns out that was a red herring, as we'll discuss, because... Well, it's not a spoiler, because the Yakuza boss wants to pair up Yuki... It's not Yuki. Sayaka and Ryubo.
Yeah.
Because he thinks that he would be a good match for her.
Yeah.
And that was an eye-opener, because this is the kind of the plot that's been reproduced in a couple of these City Hunter movies.
Yeah. And, so she gets in trouble with this biker gang. She gets abducted by them. At the beginning of this volume, they're taking her to some place. She's about to meet the boss of this gang, who's named Tiger. And meanwhile, City Hunter has disguised himself as a biker. He looks like one of the village people. And he shows up at this thing. He's in disguise. Tiger comes out, this big, huge guy, and she starts yelling at him, saying, "You're not Tiger. Tiger, come out of there." And there's a sidecar on the motorcycle.
Yep.
And this little short guy comes out. He's like,
Yes.
4.5, 5 feet tall.
Yep.
And the big guy has a microphone, like a speaker attached, on a necklace on his chest. And this guy's speaking through a microphone to make himself appear tough by using this proxy.
Because he's so little.
Yeah.
And it turns out that his nickname or nom de guerre might be Junior.
Yes.
But no one is ever allowed to say that. No one is allowed to call
This
him
gang's
Junior.
really hilarious. They have all these things about don't call him Junior. They're like freaking out about it. It turns out this guy believes he's engaged to Sayaka. She doesn't want to marry him at all. But he says that their parents have arranged them to be married, have suggested it or whatever.
Yeah.
All the gang are not allowed to use Japanese names because this guy, Junior, doesn't like Yakuza. He hates the Yakuza. He wants to be like a foreign gang. So that's why they're called Tiger and Giant, I think, was one of them, and Dragon. They all have these kind of names which are just English translations of the kanji characters in their names.
Got it.
Yeah. In this volume, we also meet Umibozu for the first time.
That's so.
He's just introduced, but we don't get his name at first. He's a rival assassin. And this is on another job. It's different from the Sayaka job. But Sayaka becomes obsessed with City Hunter. With Ryo. She's like, I want to marry him. And she actually moves into his place. She just unilaterally, I'm just going to move into your house. Kaori's not happy about this, so there's a bit of rivalry there. She's like, I'm his assistant, and Sayaka assumes that there's something romantic. She doesn't believe her.
Yeah.
So there's this thing going on as well. So for a couple of the adventures here, it's not Kaori running around with Ryo, it's Sayaka.
Yeah.
She's the one that's kind of his assistant a little bit on some of these adventures.
Yes.
So there's this thing with this guy. I won't go into all the client business, all the adventures. Some of them are quite tangled up. But anyway, he has to call an assassin, or this client is going to call in a rival assassin, and Ryo kind of intercepts the phone call in a hilarious way.
It is very funny.
In fact, he disguises himself at one point to talk on the phone to the other assassin, even though he's on the phone.
Yes.
He puts on this fake forehead.
Yeah. To get in the mood.
Yeah.
Well, we wind right back to the very first issue where Ryu takes jobs that kind of like pluck at his heartstrings.
Yes, there's a line here which is translated by the fan translators. The client's story must touch my heart.
Very
is
good.
one of his requirements. Yeah.
And it's a chauffeur that wants to be reunited with his daughter, who believes he died because he had to fake his own death to take the rap for a politician who did a hit and run.
Yeah.
So Ryu decides that the way that they're going to get out of this is that the chauffeur is going to fake his death a second time.
Yeah. No,
But this
yes,
time
that's right.
to fool the politician,
Yeah,
who
because
is...
the politician knew that he had faked his death. Yeah.
Yes, and has never left him alone since and won't let him go back to his old life. So the solution to this is to fake his death a second time, this time just for the benefit of the politician. And the way they do that, it's, as you said, you don't want to go into too much detail, but it's so fun and convoluted.
Yeah.
He has the chauffeur pretend to have a recorded conversation of the politician admitting to the hit and run, which is Ryu faking his voice.
Yes, and we learned that he's an expert. Not only is he a superhero, he can also fake voices.
Well, he just has his abilities are just unlimited. Yeah. He's like Superman.
In fact, he fakes a woman's voice in bed in one of these chapters as well. Yeah,
he's like Silver Age Superman. He just makes powers up with the drop of a hat. He's just that good.
Yeah, this is one he uses quite a few times in this volume.
Yeah, it's great. So the chauffeur blackmails the politician, and then the politician decides to have him assassinated. And Ryu says, well, I know who he's going to call. I'll refuse it, and then they'll go to the next best guy, who is, in French he was Mammoth.
Umibozu.
Umibozu.
Yeah.
There's this whole bit where...
Umibozu was supposed to meet the client holding a red rose, and the client would have a white rose.
I know, but hold on, I want to talk about the phones.
Okay. Okay.
I know, is this just a...
It's good because it's pages. It's pages.
Pages and pages of stuff, and it's so funny. I just love this comic. So, Ryu knows that the client is going to call the assassin from a payphone, but there are two payphones next to one another. One is a touch...
One's with buttons and one is like a rotary dial.
Yes, and he really, really needs them to go to the button one so he can watch the phone number being punched in, right? Or is it the other way around?
I thought he wanted the rotary so he could hear like the amount of revolutions.
You're right, that's it. He wants to use his super hearing.
Yeah.
So, and it looks like he's about to go to the button one, which is going to mess up the whole plan. So, it's like, this is panels and panels of Ryu stressing out. So he eventually... Does he put a disguise on?
He puts on a fake mustache, and he pretends to be a guy that's lost his 10 yen piece in the machine, in the payphone. So he, attacks the machine, and he's preventing this guy from using it. So the guy uses the other phone, and while he's attacking it, apparently he has listened to the rotary.
That's it.
Dial.
You can do both at the same time. You can rant and rave and smack a payphone while listening to the rotary dialing.
Yeah.
It would make so much more sense if he was watching the buttons being pressed, but, nothing about whatever.
Yeah.
Then after the arrangement has been made for the client to meet Umibozu.
Yeah, Umibozu.
Umibozu with the red rose, and he'll be carrying a red rose. He calls
in a certain location.
Yes.
Yeah.
He calls him back, and imitating the voice of the client, which we've established he can do, he can imitate people perfectly. He tells him that they're going to meet. He wants him to carry a Ken doll. He's going to carry a Barbie doll, and they're going to meet on the statue of Hachiko at Shibuya Station.
The Hachiko dog statue, yeah.
This is a famous statue where people often meet, right? Yeah. This is a popular place to meet.
Easy location, just say, meet me at Hachiko. But you don't sit on top of it.
No. It's about 3 meters up in the air, isn't it? Or not quite that high, maybe 2 meters up.
Yeah.
But it's off the ground. It's not on the ground.
Yeah.
So we have a great shot of this huge dude with the mustache.
Yeah.
Sitting perched on top of the statue of Hachiko, and everyone's staring
holding
at him.
the Barbie doll. It's just a great setup for this gag, and I think it's maybe even the last panel of the story is him still waiting there.
Yes, and a police officer saying, "Have you had enough?"
Yeah. Yeah. There are a lot of setups like that in this.
Yeah.
There's one where he has to meet the client. Maybe it's the same client. And he shows up and he's like, "Were you supposed to be bald?" It is the same client. He's like, "Were you supposed to be bald?" And he said, "Oh, I'm bald. My pubes." And he starts undoing his pants.
He starts undoing his pants, that's right, yeah.
And then he starts doing magic tricks for some reason. But it's so funny that he started doing these magic tricks. And then the guy was like, "What are you doing? Stop doing that." And he's all upset about being interrupted from doing these tricks. Crazy stuff. A lot of flop takes in this volume, I noticed, which is when you just see
the
a
legs,
character's
right?
feet up in the air after they've fallen over from hearing something shocking. There's a great segment here, a whole series about this movie star that he's hired to protect. They think somebody's trying to kill her. And it starts with him stealing her poster. And there's a great... I mean, he does a great thing where he's able to manipulate the comic in a way... How can I describe it? Hojo, when Ciity Hunter is standing in front of the poster, it looks like two characters standing next to each other, a man and a woman.
Right.
Because it's a comic.
Yeah.
But then we get panels later on where Kaori seems to be speaking, but it's coming out of the mouth of the actress, and it's because he's holding the poster in front of her face, as we learn from the next panel.
Yes. It can only be done in a comic.
Yeah, it only works in a comic. Exactly. And it's still a comic where you don't know that you're actually looking at a picture of someone, not the actual person, because it's in two-dimensional.
There's a great gag later on where when he's hired to protect that actress, to act as her bodyguard, he goes to the management corporation or whatever that looks after her image, and he sees a much better poster.
Yes. Yes. His has been ruined by Kaori anyway. He punched a hole through it.
That's it.
Yeah.
And he says, "I'll knock 10 yen off my fee if you give me this poster."
Yeah.
And then on the very next page, there's a panel where he has hundreds of posters.
Yes. Rolled posters. He has boxes of them.
Boxes and boxes of rolled up posters. So they've negotiated him down by offering him like 1,000 posters.
Yeah.
Sorry, it just really tickled me.
It's really great. It's getting funnier and funnier, I'm finding, every volume. It's getting sillier, like way sillier, lots of visual gags and setups, like huge setups for stuff. And where I thought it was leaning into parody in volume 2, now it's like very clearly like, this is all jokey stuff.
Okay.
Like the voice changing and stuff. The superheroing was one thing, but the voice changing is another. And then he's like wearing the ridiculous disguises. Yep. And quite often when a character shows up in disguise, a new character shows up, you know it's him. It's gotten to that stage at the end where he shows up in an old man, and you're like, oh.
I'm glad you mentioned the disguises, because disguises are going to come up in the film, aren't they?
Yes, they certainly are. And I read this volume after watching the movie, and every time, and it happened with volume 2 as well, I watched the movie and I'm like, oh, this isn't like the comic. And then I read the comic, and then, actually some of this stuff is in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
And it happened reading volume 2, I think thinking back to 1, I can't remember, but anyway, that certainly happened this time, because I was like, why is it Sayaka running around in this movie, not Kaori? That's a big change. And then I read this volume, and she does run around with him.
Yeah.
Half the time.
That was serendipitous, wasn't it? Because we didn't arrange that. No. It just so happens that volume 3 is a great...
Yeah.
Lines up very well with this film.
Yeah. Okay, so again, we don't need to go into much more. I did have a feeling, reading Volume 3, that this would work better as animation than as live action. Although I do think last week's Cupidon movie, kind of, with the dream sequence and stuff, kind of got to some of those wacky visuals.
I agree. And I think that's at least in part because it was conceived as an adaptation of that anime.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so I think we can get into the movie.
Absolutely.
So, similar situation to last week. Michael Chow, director, writer, and star.
Yes. Yeah.
Bizarrely. It's a weird trend with these movies. I wonder what's going to happen next week. But it seems, again, just from my Google Translate of the Wikipedia page, it sounds like people were disappointed with the casting of Jackie Chan as Ciity Hunter, because he didn't have the right body type or the right screen persona, as we mentioned in that episode, for this character. So immediately, because this comes out 3 years later, or maybe as soon as that movie comes out, Michael Chow makes this Mr. Mumble movie, which to me is like, imagine if like you heard that Michael Keaton was going to be Batman, and you're like, no way, man. And you immediately...
Well, that's what happened, isn't it?
Immediately start making Ratman... or you make a movie called Bruce Wayne, because you can't copyright the name Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
You make a movie called Bruce Wayne, and he dresses up as a bat, or a rat.
Everyone has the same name, but it's just called Bruce Wayne instead of Batman.
Yeah.
And you can't say the words Batman.
Yes.
But it's still got Alfred. It's still got Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
That's very much like what happened here. Yeah.
But I don't know who it would be as Ratman Bruce Wayne.
Well, who wanted... Okay, well...
In 89.
Well, we did talk about this. There was that petition. People didn't want Michael Keaton to play
I guess
Bruce
it would
Wayne.
have been Tom Cruise or someone at the time.
So, hypothetically, Tom Cruise says, here's an in for me. No, and of course, Batman would have to have been a big flop. Well, not a big flop, but less successful than it was instead of the most successful movie ever up to that point.
So
here's a chance for me to make, to make something like... Presumably he's a fan. I don't know. There's not a lot of information about this movie online in English.
No.
But perhaps this is a character he cares about, and he sees an opportunity to make a movie that he thinks would do well, because Ciity Hunter did do well despite being a big pile of crap.
Yeah. I wonder. We'll get to it, I think. We start with this kind of stylish opening of Hong Kong. Reminded me of the Kids in the Hall opening, with like shots of like blurry shots of the city as you're speeding through it, kind of.
Yeah.
We open with a hostage crisis.
Yeah.
Big hostage crisis. The head, the Sayako Nogami type character in this movie, was played by Françoise Yip, and she was the sister in Rumble in the Bronx. I recognized her immediately because I've seen that movie so many times. She's the city that turns from bad to good.
Right.
And her brother's in the wheelchair and has the diamonds hidden in the pillow.
That's right.
Yeah. And so she has a lot of TV credits. Smallville, iZombie, Arrow, and the Flash Gordon TV series. And for borderline movie critic, Aliens vs. Predator 2, and she's also in Blade Trinity. So she's
possibly the most credited person we've ever had on this. Wow, that's incredible. Well, we'll be seeing her again.
Yeah, we will be seeing her again. So she's kind of the head of this hostage crisis now. We've got this elite SWAT team that comes in, and they've got two of their snipers are there. One sniper is missing, and that sniper is Meng Bo.
Yeah.
They're calling him in. They're trying to get him to come to the scene. They need his help with this vicious hostage crisis. They need 3 snipers in different locations.
Yeah.
They need him, their ace guy.
They're paging him.
They're paging him.
No mobile phones. They're paging him.
They can't get a hold of him.
Yeah.
So they bring in the guy who's the driver of the truck. They're like, you're going to shoot tonight. And he's like, oh, what? Meanwhile, we get to see where Meng Bo is, and he is at a nightclub. Pretty nasty nightclub, I'd say.
It's not the nicest place.
Well, it's a
bit seedy.
It's very
It's a bit of a seedy kind of...
This woman propositions him. She says, let's go have sex in the toilet. I don't want small talk. And he gets interrupted by his handler. We'll talk about the handler in a minute. Then he's dancing with some girl, and this other guy cuts in and just starts grinding on her, and she's okay. He seems to be getting on with another woman. She turns out to be an escort that wants $5,000 for the night.
Yeah, and he doesn't want that. It's interesting. I think I like this because, well, in the translation that I saw, it was sort of implied that if the ladies are just giving it up, he's not interested.
Yes.
Because what he really likes is the thrill of the chase, I suppose.
Yes. And then one woman he gets really drunk with...
He's a bit turned off by the lady at the bar who says, let's go have sex in the toilet.
Yeah.
But he's not... his handler does come up and interrupt, but I got the impression that he just wasn't that interested anyway.
There was a funny bit where he's talking to one of them, I don't remember which one, but he starts drooling like crazy, and the water's just pouring out of his mouth.
Well, everyone... It's fucking running gag in this movie. The only cocktail anyone knows how to order is a blowjob.
Well, at one point a woman orders sex on the beach.
Well, that's the only other cocktail anyone ever orders.
They only order... I have to say, this movie's pretty salacious. In a way, maybe the most of the 3. No, surely last week's was hornier than this one.
That's hard. Well, because it had breasts on display.
Yes, that's true.
But yeah, I feel like it's the most like the manga. So yes, there's not a lot of sex going on.
No,
but you can tell that Meng Bo is really keen on it.
Yeah, and there's so much talk about blowjobs because of cocktail.
And well, that's partly, I suppose, because blowjob is an English word and this is a Cantonese movie.
Yeah.
So it's less filthy, and if you're a Chinese speaker, it's just a kind of titillating term.
Titillating is a good word for it, because there's a scene where this woman zips down her top. She has huge breasts. She puts the blowjob in her cleavage and tips it up into her mouth.
Without using her hands.
Without using her hands.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Is that the scene where he drools, or is that the later one? I think it's the later one.
Yeah, that's later. But, yeah, so he's in the seedy place. There's another woman that he gets really quite drunk with.
Yes. This is actually Kaori.
Yes.
Although we don't know that
We don't know that until a crazy reveal an hour into the movie.
So nuts. Anyway, she's trying to get him drunk, I think, she has...
ulterior motives.
Perfect.
Which will be revealed later on.
Yeah.
Because we don't even know if this character's going to come back again. It's a shock when she does later on in the movie.
Yeah.
So, his handler, who turns out to be the Umibozu in this movie in a very different role... I don't know what is his job?
Yeah.
Why is he trying to get him to the SWAT team? Is he police as well, or do the police know that this guy is errant and they need to...
This is the biggest difference from the comic. At first I thought that they managed to... at one point they bump into one another early on when he comes up, when he's speaking to the woman at the bar, the one that wants to sleep with him in the toilet. And they sort of bump into one another. And I thought at that point that they'd swapped pages, or the big guy had accidentally taken his pager. Yeah. And that's why he then comes up to him when he's drinking with the Kaori character and says, "Here, you're being paged."
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, okay, they've just banged into one another and he's ended up with his pager somehow. No, he's his consigliere.
Yeah. Yeah. He has a restaurant. Okay, he's not a cop. He runs his own bar or restaurant or whatever.
I suppose he sort of fills the role that Kaori's dad does in the comics, where they're partners. Because I think they're clearly sort of business partners in some way, shape, or form.
Kaori's brother.
Yeah, sorry, Kaori's brother, not Kaori's dad.
It gets changed in every version.
Yeah, yeah.
It's been different in every version we've watched.
To be fair, that's why I can't keep track of it.
It's either been cousin, brother, father. Yeah. Okay.
So he's Ryu's partner instead of a rival assassin.
Right. Okay, that makes sense. I didn't make that connection somehow, but you're right.
But that's a pretty big change.
Yeah.
But that's essentially it.
Yeah. So he's the one that's like, you got to get to this job. He shows up too late. All the hostages have been shot and killed.
But no blood, surprisingly.
Yeah. The driver's kind of screwed up because he didn't know when
his hands shake because he drinks too much coffee.
Yes. Yeah. But then it's revealed that it was a drill.
Yep.
Now, I couldn't tell from my subtitles whether Meng Bo knew it was a drill or not.
Oh, good point. I don't think it really matters.
He did. I don't think he... Well, it does matter, because he could stay at the bar all night if he didn't care because it was a drill. But I think he didn't know. I feel like he was maybe surprised when he showed up.
That's odd, because then did everyone else involved know it was a drill? Because the purpose is so that we, the audience, are surprised to find out it's a drill. Because everyone is playing it absolutely straight. No one ever mentions it's a drill.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a guy in charge who's using all this gratuitous English.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
Eddie. Yeah.
That's right, Eddie. It's fantastic. He'll say one line in Cantonese and then he'll be like, "Fuck it!
Yeah.
Let's go!"
Yeah. Did your subtitle say "funk it"? I noticed on the YouTube.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And also, much like Ciity Hunter, when dialogue is uttered in English, the English translation will be just way off.
Yes. Yeah. That's right.
It'll be just something else
I've
entirely.
noticed that on a lot of Hong Kong subs.
Yeah. It's so weird.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that comes about. Do they have a Chinese transcript, or how would they?
Bizarre, yeah. It's so bizarre. But it happens all the time. Yeah, somebody speaks English and the subtitle does not match what they're actually saying.
A mystery for the ages.
Yeah. Okay, so he's fired on the spot by Eddie.
Yeah.
He's like, you're out. So he's got no job. He goes back to Umibozu's bar.
Yep.
We'll call him Umibozu because I don't really know his name.
He doesn't have a name in this.
By the way...
No, sorry, he's called Monster.
Oh, that's right, Monster. So we've established a backstory. This is like year one or the prequel of Ciity Hunter. I did look up on Wikipedia what the actual backstory of Ciity Hunter is, and he was I
looked this up too.
He was a sole survivor. He was a 3-year-old. As a 3-year-old, he was in a plane crash and was the sole survivor in Central America, and he was raised by a guerrilla fighter.
Yeah.
And then he made his way back to Japan.
I looked this up, incidentally, way back in week 1, and I just didn't bring it up because it's just so nuts.
Yeah. And it's really...
It just has no bearing, really. And also, the guerrilla fighter treated him with LSD.
Whoa, okay.
And the LSD had the effect of creating his hyper-capable reflexes.
Okay.
But also ramping up his sex drive.
You know what, though?
It's better without this stuff.
Without reading the volumes, it's hard to know how comedically all that stuff is treated.
Right. Oh, true.
I have a feeling it might be totally presented as ridiculous and hilarious. You read the wiki page and it's like, this is just very straightforward.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when I read it. I just thought, this is just so... This is the craziest kind of like comic book superhero origin.
Yeah.
This has no bearing on the comic that I feel like we're reading.
Yeah. So while he's at the bar with Umibozu, this girl walks in, Yuki.
Yep.
We'll call her Yuki.
Yep.
She's the Sayaka type.
Yes.
IMDb says her name is Yuki.
Yeah. But she's actually Sayaka, the daughter of the Yakuza boss.
So I might use either name through the course of this conversation. Played by Paulyn Sun, apparently from Singapore. She is in Ichi the Killer.
Really?
Apparently so, yeah.
Well, then she'll be back.
Yep, she will be back. Then some big heavies show up at the bar, seemingly in pursuit of her. Mm-hmm. He tries to protect her, but he doesn't actually fight the guys much. I think Umibozu does most of the beating up.
Well,
of these
it's played
guys.
for laughs. So
it is played. He does like some accidental chest grabs. Yeah, which is a bit like the comic.
Yes,
I thought.
He hits on her. He gives her free orange juice. Yeah. He's trying to put his arm around her. There's a bit of I suppose slapstick or funny violence where she'll punch him in the face to make him leave her alone.
Yes.
Then the heavies come in. She asks for help. He says, "I'll save you if you give me a kiss." Then, they muscle up to him. And he says, "This guy is going to take care of you." He ducks down. Umibozu's there. He's a legitimately huge guy.
Yeah.
Where they found a 6.5 foot tall Chinese bloke, but he's a big dude.
Yeah.
He throws them all around the bar. And then Uryu asks for his kiss. And she says, "You didn't do anything," and she gives Umibozu a kiss instead.
Yeah.
He's very happy with that.
So we've had 2 action scenes here with no fightings from Ciity Hunter, which to me was a bit odd because I think we should have established his awesomeness at this point. Like we're 20 minutes in.
He hasn't fired a gun in anger. Well, he hasn't fired a gun at all.
Yeah.
And he's not doing any
crazy kung fu moves. All that stuff comes later.
It does come later, and it's not. I suppose looking back, because it's cool. I mean, no one watching this film would be in any doubt that they're watching Ciity Hunter. So I suppose they were confused. But if you're coming in blind, I suppose it makes him seem like an overrated kind of blowhard.
Yeah.
And then it turns out he has hidden depths. So I suppose, maybe Michael Chow was going for that when he wrote it.
Yeah.
Thinking of an audience that might not be familiar with the source material.
I was thinking that the SWAT team thing would be how he established his skills and expertise with guns, and that would...
Well, certainly Françoise Yip her character is saying, you cannot resolve this hostage situation without Mumble.
Right, that is true.
She keeps saying over and over, you must wait for Mumble. Without Mumble, this operation is doomed to fail.
Yeah.
Just wait. And Eddie's like, fuck that!
Yeah.
We are going in!
Yeah.
And then, of course, it all goes pear-shaped.
Yes.
And Mumble is sacked.
So, as Yuki is leaving the bar, Umibozu's bar, somehow he convinces her to stay at his place. I think maybe because it's closer than her walking to her own house or whatever.
Yes.
So he's like, come up, stay with me. She actually doesn't want to go home anyway, I think, at this stage, which hasn't been established. There's a funny sequence here where when she's in the bathroom, he puts up all these lights and stuff that he has already, like, to make his room into the sex den, just like within a matter of seconds.
Yes.
It's pretty good.
Yes, it is.
He spies on her, like, through a crack, and she kicks him a couple of times.
Yeah.
When she catches him kind of spying. I think maybe even by accident once. I can't remember. Was there a thing with his pants? He takes his pants down.
He takes his pants off, yeah.
Great, hilarious. Actually, I really did like this bit because he takes his pants off. Just her back's to him. He comes into her bedroom, takes his pants down.
She says, like,
screams.
it's time for bed.
She looks at his underwear.
Brilliant. He comes in and takes his pants off.
She looks and she says, Mickey Mouse. And he says, you don't like Mickey Mouse? And he
pulls his pants back up. It is funny.
So he goes back to the bar.
She locks him out.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, he goes back to the bar. Now the woman comes in with the
cleavage and
she drinks the shot. He gets a nosebleed in a very. I thought that was a Japanese thing. I guess it's in Chinese.
Well, I'm sure it's a nod to the source material.
Yeah, it must be in there at some stage.
So it's probably a Toriyama kind of. Is this exclusive to Toriyama, the nosebleed thing, or is it?
No, it's across Japanese media.
Must be a nod to the source.
It's anytime you're turned on, the nosebleed happens.
I don't associate it with Hong Kong cinema, so I would say I would say Michael Chow is saying
right. So this woman gets him drunk, takes him in a car to...
She gives him a special cocktail
with gasoline in it?
Yes, it
Not
does have
tobacco.
gasoline in it.
Yeah.
It was a funny bit. I laughed. She makes him. It's a flaming cocktail. She lights it. She gives him a straw. He drinks it, and then he instantly passes out.
Yeah.
And then she says to the driver, "Wow, what did you put in that?" And the driver says, "Gasoline."
Yeah.
so yeah, he's not dead.
Yeah. So
He's just really drunk.
Yeah, he ends up at this fancy mansion where these triad dudes are hanging out.
Yeah.
And it's the dad of Yuki and her cousin who is engaged to her.
Yeah.
A bit like Tiger in the comic.
Yes.
Very similar situation.
Yes.
Gangster dad, engaged to someone.
Yeah. And she doesn't.
She doesn't want to marry this guy.
Yeah. And also, he's really obnoxious.
Yes.
Yeah. He does a silly thing where he tries to box with
Yes.
you, but he's just being really prissy and ridiculous.
Yeah, he's got a ridiculous stance.
Yeah.
Boxing stance.
We're meant to think he's an idiot.
Yeah. But they're trying to get her back, and they offered to pay him now. So do they not know that she's in his apartment, or how do they know that he knows where she is? Oh, because she went into that bar.
Yeah.
And then the big guys, the heavies, got thrown out.
Yeah.
So they know that he's had contact with her, but they don't know that she's in his apartment, I guess? Otherwise, they could just go to her apartment and grab her. Why do they need to pay
They must not know that
$300,000?
that she's in his apartment, because I suppose from their perspective, they've sent in their heavies. The heavies have got thrown out. So then they sent in the sexy femme fatale,
Yeah.
and she's succeeded where they failed, but the girl's not there.
Ah, right.
So they're like, well, she was in your bar. You protected her. We want her. Here's
Gotcha.
the money.
Okay, that makes sense. There is a funny bit here where, for some reason, Ciity Hunter flings a fork. It gets flung out of his hand and it just jabs into this guy's leg.
Oh,
But he doesn't react.
You're right. So the father is not in this scene.
Oh, that's right.
It's a bloke in a wheelchair.
Yes, that's his second in command.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's right.
Although we don't know that yet at this point, or do we? Anyway,
I don't remember.
This guy turns out to be the second in command.
Yeah.
He's in a wheelchair. He handles all the business,
Yeah.
and the boss himself is one step removed.
Yes. Okay, so one of these gangsters has a newspaper interviewer. So he got an interview with some reporter that wants to talk to him.
Yeah.
So they meet at this looks like a sushi bar. But then it turns out that the reporter is secretly an assassin. He's just disguised himself. He's cover stories. He's a reporter.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Meng Bo is bringing Yuki to this place, to this restaurant.
Yeah.
So he's got her outside, and when she's in, and when the assassination happens, he senses it. And we get this 3 or 4 times this movie where
It's
we
great.
get this effect where everything's blacked out, except like shadows, except for his eyes. We get
Yeah.
light on his eyes, and they'll get a sound effect like shing, sound effect, and
Yeah.
it's like he's detected. And I was like, it's kind of the one Ciity Hunter thing, but it's something he actually does in Volume 3 where he senses Umibozu with a rocket launcher on the other side of a wall. He just senses that he's there.
It's straight out of a comic panel.
Yeah.
We see a reaction take, so he will turn to camera.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty straightforward physical effect. They've just got him in a dark room,
Yeah.
and they're shining a light just across his
Across
eyes.
the eyes, yeah.
It looks great.
Yeah. Yeah, but it is the the one Ciity Hunter superpower he has. I think the only one.
Well, he can
in this movie.
sense things, so he can. Well, I mean, he has endless powers.
Yes, but in
that's
this
one
movie
thing
he has spider sense. That's kind of the one. Like he's detected that somebody has died inside this restaurant that was secretly done. Even the other men in the restaurant don't notice it because this assassin was so stealthy with his special attack. Yuki comes in there. She talks to this guy. She's like, "I wish you were." Maybe it was this the annoying cousin? No.
Yes. It's the
Oh,
same
it is
guy.
a cousin. Oh, okay.
So he's the one talking to the reporter.
Yes,
the reporter
right.
kills him, as you
That's
said,
right.
in a shockingly brutal fashion by
Yeah.
driving a meat skewer,
Yeah.
through the back of his head,
Yeah.
through his mouth.
Yeah.
We don't see it occur, but we see the aftermath, which is just him with a skewer coming out of his mouth.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Yuki comes in, she's like, "I wish you were dead." She doesn't realize he's dead at that moment, and then he keels over, head first onto the table, and they're like, "You killed him." She's like, "No, I didn't kill him."
Well, all of his bodyguards who are all standing around and apparently missed his brutal murder.
Yeah. Well, that's how good this guy is, this
Yes.
assassin.
And yet Yuki is technically a witness to this.
Yes.
Even though she didn't see it happen. Because part of the rest of the film is that this assassin will now pursue Yuki.
Yes. That's right, because she
witnessed it.
She witnessed
Never mind that the room was full of people anyway.
Yeah.
And she only arrived after the murder had occurred.
Yeah.
For the plot to happen, we need her to be a quote-unquote witness to the murder.
Yes.
And the assassin wants to kill her.
Yeah. That was a bit funky.
It's a bit of a plot hole.
Yeah. So now he's hanging out with... Meng Bo's hanging out with Yuki. I don't remember why they were still hanging out. She goes to this nightclub. I don't remember why she was going there.
Well, he saves her from the cousin's bodyguards.
Yes, that's right. So are they after her at this stage? Why did she go to this nightclub? What is she hoping to do there? She just want to hang out and have fun, or is she supposed to meet someone, or what? Or are they... It's just a place to hide from the other triad guys that are in pursuit?
Good question. I don't think it's really clear.
I don't know. But she goes in there. He tries to follow her in. Ladies only club.
Yes.
Not only that, it's a lesbian club.
Yes.
It is revealed later on.
Yes.
So he comes in drag, which I thought was quite funny.
Very funny, actually.
And
it's brilliant. So he, as you say, she goes to hide. She must be trying to hide, I suppose.
yes, because she's attacked.
Yes, in fact, she is going there to hide because later on, when she's fished out of there by the owner of the club, it's pretty clear that she thought that she would be safe in there because it's only women.
Yes, that's right.
So she goes in. Meng Bo tries to follow her in, and this very tough kind of like butch lady is like, no entry. You can't come in. It's ladies only.
Yeah.
She like puts a hand on his chest. No. And he's like, okay, he goes. And then, of course, as you've already pointed out, he comes back in drag. He looks fantastic.
Yeah.
He passes, except he's got ridiculously broad shoulders.
Yes.
Because this bloke, Michael Chow, is in pretty good shape.
Yeah, he's in amazing shape. I mean, we've had 3 in a row. I wonder what next 2 weeks is going to be like. And reading the comic this week, he's really buff there too, but I was surprised at how...
This guy had hit the gym.
Yeah, he definitely. Yeah.
He wasn't Gary Daniels style, but he wasn't quite on that level, but he was fit.
Yeah.
He put on muscle.
In fact, I was like, when I read about how they didn't like Jackie Chan's height or whatever, I was like, well, what about, Jackie Chan was that was peak muscle era for Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
And then I was like, what about this guy? And there's a scene later on where there's a chase, and there's a lot of gaze at his muscles.
Yeah. Well,
and I'm like, what's going on? But then later we get a scene where his shirt's off, and the guy is really jacked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's been hitting the gym.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he looks...
But yeah, now he's dressed as a woman.
Isn't fantastic? I mean, he's made up.
Yeah.
He's managed to apply his makeup perfectly somehow in the last 2 minutes.
Just like the comic.
Yeah.
Disguised in a second.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And not only does he look fantastic despite his enormous shoulders, but of course, the very butch door guard is enamored of him.
Yeah, yes, yes.
In a fun reversal of the way this usually plays, where it'll be some guy that's fascinated by the man in drag. Now it's a gay woman.
Yes. Yes.
A fun inversion.
Yes. And he does go in there, and this woman starts looking at him, and it's almost like he forgets he's in disguise, because he goes up there.
Yeah, because he's so sex mad. Yeah, I mean,
and then the other woman figures out that he's not actually a woman.
But she's okay with it because she goes both ways.
Yes.
And then what she does is she runs her hand up his thigh.
Yeah.
And then encounters something.
Yes.
And then she's shocked.
Yeah.
But she's okay with it.
Yeah.
Then he runs his hand up her thigh.
Yes. And then he's shocked.
And of course he's shocked. She is also in drag.
Yeah.
Although of course it's not possible because she's actually a very comely woman.
Yes. Well, he's doing this fake falsetto voice, and when they do her male voice, they've dubbed it over to someone else. So he runs away from that, but then he encounters a woman that got him totally drunk.
Yes.
At the first bar.
Yes.
And at that first bar, she pulled out a lighter shaped like a gun, and she pulls it out again here. But it's an actual gun, so she takes a shot at him. So we've established this point that she's following him, or something like that.
She wants something from him. Yes.
Yeah. In fact, to the point
now she's tried to kill him as he's attempted to save Yuki.
Yeah.
So Yuki Saika has been cornered by some guys. She says, "What are you doing? You can't be in here. This is women only." And he laughs and says, "I own this club, and you're coming with me."
Yeah.
He takes her outside to an alley. Mumble gets up. The character who we know is Kaori, but we don't know that yet. Us watching the film, we know now that she's Kaori. She tries to shoot him with that. It's like a Derringer. It's like a very, very small gun. It was a lighter in a previous scene. This time it's an actual gun. I guess it's wildly inaccurate because she misses.
Yeah.
And it hits a mirror.
Yeah. Yeah.
He looks, but he doesn't have time for this. Out into the alley.
Yeah, I don't think she hid the gun behind her back, so he doesn't know what happened exactly.
Oh, and then a person moves in front of camera,
Yeah,
and when the
she
person has
disappears.
gone away, she's disappeared.
She disappeared. Yeah.
That's done a lot in this movie, actually, mostly by Mumble himself.
Oh, right.
We will often have him vanishing or appearing. I guess it's another super power that he possesses along with his spidey sense.
Yeah.
He has that Batman ability to
Yes.
vanish in plain sight
Yeah.
or appear in plain sight.
Yeah. So they go out in the alley and the bad guys corner them and start throwing empties at them.
Yeah.
Empty bottles. Seem very reminiscent of Rumble in the Bronx from a year earlier.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
But the difference here is Meng Bo starts catching the bottles and he just catches them one after the next.
Yep.
It's pretty hilarious. You can see how they've set up the shot. There's probably a table just out of frame with all the bottles on it. He's just grabbing them off of there. But then he looks over and Yuki has stacked them in a perfect like arrangement,
Tower.
like a tower, like you would see at a grocery store. Or something.
Yep.
This was tonally, this moment is very different from the rest of the movie because we don't really have this unreality kind of well, I guess the spider sense, but we haven't had a moment like this where the camera pans over and we've got a perfect tower of bottles for him to start launching back.
Yeah, this is it's played pretty straight most of the time. It's not like last week.
This is a silly moment that's close to the comic.
Yeah.
Unlike, I think, a lot of the rest of the movie, which, as you said, plays it pretty straight. Yeah.
Yes, you're right. And he actually says we should open a convenience store.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they start throwing them back.
Yeah.
This thing goes on for a while.
Yeah.
Basically, people are just throwing bottles at one another and catching them. Even though, canonically, Ryu should have ultra-fast reflexes, and so his catching the bottles makes sense.
Yes.
When he's throwing the bottles back to these regular goons, they're catching them as well.
Yeah, they catch a couple, but then they get, like, hit in the head.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an odd scene, as you say.
Yeah. It's just totally different from the rest of the movie. It would fit in more with last week's.
Yeah, I think so.
So now we get a montage, because I guess Yuki's going to hang out with Meng Bo.
Well, they escape from the alley.
They escape from the alley. Then we get a montage of him hanging out. He's teaching her how to shoot. He's painting her, like he's doing a painting. He's taking pictures of her underwater.
Yep. He's teaching her self-defense.
Yes.
Yep. So he like pulls a gun on her and teaches her how to push it aside and flip over her knee.
Yeah.
So flip him onto the ground over her knee, and kind of like a judo move.
There's also a moment where they're walking down the street and he bumps into a guy who's wearing the same outfit, the powder blue jacket and the red shirt.
Yep.
And this is either a nod to Staying Alive, where Sylvester Stallone bumps into Travolta, or it's a nod to Beverly Hills Cop, where Eddie Murphy sees that guy who dresses like he dressed in his stand-up specials.
Right. It could be. This went over my head. Actually, it could be either of those.
It was just such a pronounced moment. Or I have a hunch that guy had to be some famous.
Oh yeah, there are cameos.
Yeah.
Every now and again, I was watching this with Vannie. Every now and again, Van would say, "That's cameo," as some bloke indistinguishable from every other bloke in the movie showed up, and delivered one line.
Yeah.
Presumably, it's not as obnoxious as the Jackie Chan one where we had those radio hosts. No, they would just be in shot for a second and then disappear.
Right. Yes. So yeah, that one just stuck out a little bit to me.
Yeah, me too. It probably is a reference to one of those two things that you mentioned.
So now they go to an orphanage. He takes her to this orphanage where her dad is there.
Yeah.
And the guy in the wheelchair.
Yep.
And Psycho, the cop.
Yes.
The Rumble in the Bronx cop.
Yes.
Now, okay, why did they go to this place? And
she's
why
like
is she
Helen
there?
in
Yeah,
last
she's Helen.
week's.
Yes. Yeah. She's the Helen character. So why are they here? Is he tricking her into meeting her father to force them to make amends? And why is this head cop hanging out with these triad members? There was some explanation, but it was like one or two lines, and I didn't quite catch it.
What's happened? I couldn't quite follow how they got there, but what's happened is that the source of we've established in the previous alley scene, Yuki Sayaka says, "Wait till my dad hears about this that you guys are trying to rough me up," and he says, "Everyone knows you and your father are feuding."
Okay.
Then we arrive at this orphanage scene. Her father is there, as well as the guy in the wheelchair. Her father's sort of like a tall, kind of like guy with dyed black hair and glasses. It turns out they're feuding because Sayaka doesn't approve. She wants him to get out of organised crime.
Yes, she wants him to go clean, yeah.
Yes. She wants him to go straight and like start a charity and stop being involved in organised crime. And in this scene, it's established that that's what he's doing. He's set up a charitable foundation.
Okay, so Ciity Hunter has found out about this, and he's like, Okay, you're
That
going to go
must
see
be
your
the case.
father.
That must be the case.
Look, he's
trying to
actually a good
reconcile
guy who's running this orphanage.
And the fact that the cop's there, I suppose, means that this is a straight business proposition, and there's nothing sus about it.
Okay, so he's trying to prove it to the cop lady?
The fact that a cop is in the area shows that this is on the level. This is like a real charity. It's not some sort of trick.
Yeah. Okay.
I suppose. Funnily, it's called Shares. Did you notice later on when they have that dinner party?
Yeah.
The sign says Shares Orphanage.
Yes.
Like Cher the singer.
Yeah.
I was like watching. I was like, what is this? And that's sort of a.
But that's her name.
Yeah,
Yuki. Her name is Cher.
Her name is Cher.
Yeah.
But in my subtitles,
That's the name I didn't give. I called her Yuki and Sayaka this whole episode. I have not called her Cher once, but that is the name.
But it's spelled Cher like the singer Cher.
Yeah.
Like Sonny and Cher.
Yes, in the subtitles, but it's Shue or
Well, in my subtitles, it wasn't Cher.
Okay.
It was like Cher or something like that.
Okay.
And so to see Cher's orphanage,
Yeah.
it seems very apropos of
Yes,
nothing.
right. So here the reporter assassin attacks again from like behind a bush. We get a big car chase. This is where we get the first muscle shot of this guy as he gets ready to chase the car on foot. He crouches down. He's like all tensed up and like flexing.
Well, he's pumped. He's pumped up. He's done a few. He's done a few reps before this scene.
Yeah. There's a moment.
Incidentally, with the fiberglass car, I just want to mention this is a funny scene. So they, monster mammoth Umibozu has showed up.
Yeah.
As he often does. He's often showing up in the nick of time to pick up Mumble and take him where he needs to go. So he showed up in this red car, and they're chasing the guys that have kidnapped Yuki, and they get in an accident, and the car flips and ends up on its roof. And it's sort of sliding around. And they've done a pretty good transition between a real car and this car, which is made of, I assume, fiberglass or plastic or something. It's a prop car that a person could just lift with, you know, like one hand. It's sort of skidding, it's sliding around.
That was pretty good, actually.
And they're trapped inside it. Yeah. And as you say, Ryu has to wriggle out, which he manages to do, and he leaves Umibozu sort of like inside it.
And he shoots a tire in this scene, which I thought was pretty good. That was like a Ciity Hunter moment.
Yes, it was. In fact, the first time his improbable aiming skills were demonstrated, I think.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's played out very clearly. He gets down, he lies prone, he has the gun out, and we can see from his perspective. There are people walking across. A child leans down to pick up a coin. You see his eyes. He's trying to figure out. He's moving his head back and forth. He's trying to figure out the angle. Eventually, we can see a clear line of sight the way he sees it. He shoots. He blows out the tire. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah. Now we have another fight in an alley. This time, I think with the assassin.
Yes.
There's a moment here where he leaps across. It's a John Woo jump with like the gun where he leaps sideways across frame.
Another ability he's never demonstrated. He can now dodge bullets.
Yeah.
He's sort of jumping off the walls of the alley.
Yeah.
He's like doing parkour.
Yeah, I think this is the first martial arts sequence we get with him. Because we have had this amazing scene where he hulked out with the car and he ran and he shot. But
I thought he was getting ready to lift the car. Because he's really hulking out, as you say.
Yeah.
He's flexing.
Yeah.
He's virtually bursting out of his tank top.
Yeah.
And I thought, he's going to lift that car and rescue Umibozu. No.
Yeah.
No. He's just about to do a sprint. He runs across Hong Kong, essentially.
Yeah. So this is where that girl from the bar 1 and bar 2 shows up again. And suddenly, this is an hour into the movie.
Yep.
Suddenly, we learned that Ciity Hunter had some partner, this guy that trained him to shoot in the police force that was accused of corruption or something. There was something about
He was corrupt, but he was taking money from organised crime to pay for the girl...
brain surgery.
Her brain surgery.
Okay.
So he was bent, but he was bent for a good reason.
For good reason.
Then he's cut his wrists in the bathroom. Meanwhile, Mumble is coming to arrest him for corruption. He finds him with his wrist cuts. He rips off his shirt sleeves, binds his wrists, at which point the guy says, "You have to shoot me.
Otherwise I can't get the insurance.
Because if I die by suicide, I can't get the insurance."
But he had just cut his wrist.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense.
Doesn't add up.
Also, why would he need the insurance when he's already taken bribes to pay for brain surgery?
Yeah.
So this is a little like, I suppose that story in the first volume where the woman has incurable cancer and she
Yeah, she signs over her insurance.
She signs over her insurance to him.
as
This-
payment.
Yeah, this would be familiar, I suppose, to readers of the comic. Close enough.
Maybe.
Anyway, he says, "You got to shoot me. Tell him I was resisting arrest." And he goes, "I'm not going to shoot you." But then I think he shoots himself. It's not
He
quite
holds
clear.
the gun against himself in a way that it looks like City Hunter pulled the trigger.
Right.
Because his colleagues come in and say you didn't have to kill him just because he was corrupt. So they
His
assume
colleagues that were a few steps behind him but weren't there for the big...
Yeah.
Because he just went and arrested him on his own in the bathroom.
Yeah.
It's a bit weird.
Yeah.
This whole scene's a bit odd. And then the best bit. So... the best bit is where Umibozu has arrived to explain everything, wearing a car door around his neck.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't been able to get... It is funny. He hasn't been able to get out of the car without taking the car door with him. He's explained everything, this situation, to the girl, because Ryu himself, Mumble, is too moral, too proud to tell the daughter that the guy committed suicide and was actually corrupt.
Yeah.
He's too much of a good guy, which is consistent with the comic, because ultimately Ryu in the comic has a heart of gold. Despite his perverse behaviour, when it comes down to the wire, it's always demonstrated that he is a deeply moral individual.
Wait a second. Kaori was the son of a murderer.
Yeah.
The daughter of a murderer.
Yeah. Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the brother this whole time, the older brother. But
I think I think he's merged both.
She merged.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yep.
Okay, so it's not that far off. But narratively, it is very strange to suddenly drop
It's
this an
fucking
hour into the
bizarre.
movie.
It doesn't make sense in terms
There
of...
was been no hint of this other storyline, except for the girl being in the bar those two times.
It only makes sense if you know the comics. As you say,
And as a setup for the sequel, which
Right.
find
Yeah.
the final shot of this.
And it belies the kind of effort that the Michael Chow has made to make the movie accessible to people that don't know the source material.
yeah.
Because this scene makes zero sense unless you're familiar with the comic.
Yeah.
The best bit, by far, is when Umibozu says, "This is why Mumble wears a red shirt and a blue jacket."
Yeah, we get an origin story. It's like Solo, a Star Wars story.
Yeah.
You got to explain why his jacket is blue and his shirt is red.
It's very silly.
Yeah.
So his shirt was stained with red by his teacher's blood, and he wears the blue jacket because blue skies are happy and to make him happy and distract him from the death of his teacher. And it's just... That's why he wears the blue shirt, a red shirt and a blue jacket.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It's also very cheeky if you've got an unlicensed City Hunter movie to go right into the bat flew in through the window and he figured that's how I'll scare criminals because criminals are cowardly lot kind of scene in here. Very bizarre little moment.
I wonder if it is ever explained in the comic why Ryu always wears the outfit that he does. That very 80s outfit of the t-shirt and the safari jacket.
I can't imagine that they do, but if they do, it's probably tied to LSD in some way, I'm sure. Okay, so next we have Yuki's having a big banquet. Cher. The
Cher's orphanage, yeah.
Cher's having... There's some big banquet for, a fundraising thing?
It's to launch the charity.
To launch the charity, right. So there's a big...
Because he's going straight. It's a big deal.
Yes.
There's a funny scene where Meng Bo cooks his steak on a candle flame.
Yes.
Because he doesn't want to eat it.
I quite liked where he looks down at the cleavage of the older lady sitting next to him, and she, maybe by accident...
No, it is by accident. What happens is, first this is very funny, and I even made a note of it in my notes. First of all, he cooks his steak on a candle flame because it's too rare for him. Maybe it's steak tartare or something like that, and he's too much of a Philistine, too much of a bogan or what have you to realise that he's supposed to eat it rare, so he cooks it on a decorative candle in front of him. Then he tries to squeeze lemon juice on it. The lemon juice goes in his eye.
Oh, yes, that's right.
He closes his eye. It looks like he's winking.
Yeah,
He turns to the woman next to him, and she says, "Shame on you, my son is already a teenager." You pervert!
Yeah.
Stop hitting on me!
Yeah.
Very funny.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Then he accidentally, when he tries to uncork a bottle of champagne because he's got big muscles, the waiter says, "Can you do this?"
Yep.
He accidentally punches her in the face. And the son's reaction is, "You didn't have to punch her just because she turned you down."
Yeah. It's great.
I did write down the word dance. Was there something funny about the dance they had together or something?
They do get up and dance, so I don't think there was anything funny about it, especially.
They do have a dance together. After they leave the banquet, they are ambushed. Dad...
That is Dad and the daughter.
Dad and the daughter.
He's gone straight, and yet, nonetheless, he's been ambushed for some reason.
And at this point, I was a little bit confused. Like, have we dealt with the assassin and Kaori at this stage? Like, what? But then it's kind of explained. So, it was the guy in the wheelchair, his business partner.
Yes.
Isn't happy about him going straight. He wants all the holdings.
Yes.
All the business properties, all that stuff.
And he's behind... He sees himself as having sacrificed everything
Yes.
for this father, the Yakuza boss.
Yeah.
Triad boss, rather. And he's outraged that he's going straight after he gave up so much, including the loss of his legs, apparently. So presumably he lost the use of his legs in some kind of triad business.
Yeah, right.
And it turns out he sees himself as having the guy's best interests at heart.
Yeah.
And it turns out he's behind the assassination of, first of all, the cousin, the obnoxious cousin.
Yes.
Because that guy he didn't love Yuki. He just wanted the influence and the money.
And we know that. He said that in a scene.
You're right.
Yeah,
So
earlier. He's like, yeah.
maybe that's when he found out. Because Wheelchair Guy was there in that scene. And then the Triad boss naturally says, then why the hell did that assassin go after my daughter? And he says, well, that wasn't my fault. It was because she witnessed the murder.
Yeah.
The guy had to go after her. It's like, this is absurd. You don't care about my family or me. You're just bitter and you want my money.
Yeah.
And he's like, damn right. You know, sign here.
Yeah, so he makes them sign over the properties, but now they also need Yuki's signature on these documents, so they're going to abduct her and force her to sign as well.
Yes.
Meng Bo gets ready in a scene. This is where the topless scene, where we get to see the size of his chest.
Yep.
And he builds this rig like Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver around his arm. We're like, not sure what it's for, but he explains later on what it's for. And then he busts into this place. Now, this is a pretty long sequence. I'm going to say 15, 20 minutes of the movie.
This is the best bit of the film.
It's a Hong Kong climax.
I've been waiting for this.
20, like a Jackie Chan movie, 20-minute final fight.
Yep.
So he bursts into the warehouse, or whatever, their headquarters, upside down through the roof, much like The Punisher.
Yes!
Punisher Warzone.
Like the opening scene of Punisher Warzone.
Yeah.
But less cool.
Yeah, no, because he doesn't rotate on the chandelier.
He doesn't rotate on the chandelier. But it is great.
Yeah, he comes in upside down. I didn't write a lot of notes here. At one point, when they're running from the guys, he builds a dummy out of condoms.
Yes. Brilliant. Brilliant combination of theme and practice.
Yes.
So, theme, he's a horny bastard, so of course he has hundreds of condoms. Practice, he needs to survive this firefight, so he builds a dummy out of condoms, puts clothes on it.
Yeah.
Sends it down the corridor, everyone shoots at it, they're distracted, it pops!
Yeah. Yeah.
Then he pops up, takes him out.
Yeah. There's a moment here where the bad guys turn up the lights and all come in with infrared goggles, and he shoots...
Night vision goggles.
He shoots the ground or something, and the sparks blind them.
It is like that scene in Volume 1.
Yeah.
Although he doesn't shoot... It's not quite the same. He doesn't use the sparks to blind them. He shoots open the windows.
Yes,
then the sunlight streams in.
Oh, okay.
And it blinds them because they're wearing low vision goggles, and suddenly... This is a trope. In any film, whenever a bright light... I just gotta wonder...
Did they do it in Silence of the Lambs? Is that how she beat him when he was walking around with
Don't know, but I gotta wonder, wouldn't night vision goggles have some sort of filter for if the light increases up to a certain level, it wouldn't blind the users? But in every film, when anyone's ever worn night vision goggles, if you expose them to a bright light, they clutch their eyes and go, "Ah!" Yeah. That's what these guys do.
So it turns out Eddie is crooked and he's working for the gangsters.
I love this. Here. I love that he shows up at the end, spouting off all of his egregious English.
Yes. And they have a big martial arts fight, which is pretty good.
It's not bad.
It's not bad, but it's obviously not Jackie Chan level, and obviously they're not on wires or anything, because there's a moment where Eddie jumps at Meng Bo. Meng Bo kind of deflects him into a wall, almost like he catches him here and swings him, but there's a cut. So it's not like like jump and then there's a cut to when he swings him.
They're clearly not martial artists on Jackie Chan's level.
Yeah.
So this scene's been choreographed heavily, so they're doing choreographed movements, and we have a lot of cuts so that they don't have to keep it up. They can keep their movements to a kind of prescribed formula. Yeah. So it looks fine, but it's certainly nothing like...
They didn't spend 3 weeks shooting it.
Yeah, that's
obviously,
it. Yeah. There's a bit that you skip, which I really liked. He takes out, one after another, all of the bent cops. So Eddie's taken money. He wants 10% of like 5 billion Hong Kong dollars or something like that, which he has to share with all of his crooked comrades. And it's the entire... kind of like special Hong Kong police special forces. They're all bent, or maybe they're just doing what Eddie says and he's the only bent one. Maybe they think it's a training exercise or it's an actual operation.
Maybe.
Because later on, the driver shows up again, doesn't he?
Yeah. Because he's been taken hostage.
And he thinks it's still a training exercise.
As the Helen Sayako character, she's been taken hostage.
Yes, he thinks it's a training exercise still. And even when a blood-stained Eddie is threatening him at knife point, he's like, wow, this is getting really real, guys.
Yeah.
But there's a great bit where one of the cops has a pump-action shotgun.
Oh, yeah, it's good.
And Mumble, he gets off one shot, and then Mumble grabs the shotgun. The guy pumps it to reload it, and then Mumble grabs the stock, or the barrel rather, and pumps it like 5, 6, 7, 8 times, and ejects all the magazine, all the shells in a row, and it looks really cool.
Yeah,
I'm surprised I haven't seen it in. It's the first time I've ever seen that.
Yeah.
But he just overpowers him, pumps out all the shells, and then the guy has no ammo, and then he takes him out.
Yeah.
It's a really good sequence.
Yeah. It was really good. Umibozu shows up to the rescue again.
At the nick of time.
Yeah, Meng Bo uses his head to steady his hand as he takes a shot.
Yes. Oh, so that rig that he has on his arm, it turns out that his Magnum 44 pistol has been modified to such an extent that it can't be fired without some kind of mechanical brace.
Yeah, the recoil would break your arm.
Yes, and in fact, that happens because at one point Meng Bo is being held up at gunpoint by one of the crooked cops who has picked up the Magnum and is pointing it at him. But of course, when he tries to fire it, it misses wildly, breaks his arm, and he's left sort of lying on the ground, arms akimbo.
Yeah. I don't know if he ever wore a rig like that in the comic, but certainly that gun fetishism, the obsessive detail about the gun is kind of in the comic as well.
It's very on point. And then, as you say, we don't get a Ciity Hunter shot through the legs, but instead we get him using Umibozu's head as a brace.
Yes.
And his strong arms. He reaches up and grabs the gun.
Yeah.
And then Helene
spreads her.
She sort of does the split.
She does the split. She's tied up. Her arms are over her head. She's hanging, and she does the splits to let the bullet through to hit the guy that's behind her.
Yeah. Well, it's Eddie. And
it's crazy.
There's no doubt that that's something straight out of the manga.
Yeah.
Because that's a kind of wacky shenanigans.
It is absolutely.
And it's like the scene last week where Ciity Hunter shoots through Kaori's legs, except it's a reversal. Instead, he's using Umibozu and shooting through Helene's legs.
Yeah.
It's definitely a nod to the comic.
Yeah. So then I think we cut to a few months later. Was there a card or something? I can't remember. But he's trying to set up. He's been paid by the Triad boss, now straight, to set up a PI business.
Yep.
So he's handing out flyers at a subway station outside.
Outside Central Station in Hong Kong.
Okay.
Which would be the Hong Kong equivalent of Shibuya in Tokyo.
Yeah.
So, and of course, famously, that's where Ciity Hunter in the manga recruits his business by people writing XYZ on the notice board at Shibuya.
Yeah. So, the Sayako character comes up through the subway. She's been catching perverts, so she's kind of scantily clad, and she's been just catching gropers.
She's got it's like a dozen gropers, and they're all handcuffed together.
Yeah. But then the Kaori character shows up.
Yep.
And she whacks him with maybe a gym bag.
It's I would say a gym bag with a tennis racket handle sticking out of it.
So it looks like
and it looks like the hammer.
Looks like the hammer.
A nice little
touch.
That's
the last shot of the movie.
Yeah.
Which seems to me it looked like a sequel setup because it's kind of going to establish them as a pair.
Yeah.
Working together.
And don't forget, before this we get a sequence where Yuki, Sayaka, and Ryu Mumble are in his apartment.
Yeah.
And she's doing, I suppose, essentially a striptease.
Oh, yeah.
And she's very into him.
Yeah.
Now at this point.
Right.
She's in love with him, basically.
Yeah,
and she's giving him, she's offering up everything. She compliments him on his impressive gun.
Yes. Oh, we didn't talk about the scene where the Psycho character comes in and she comes into his apartment and she's trying to get information out of him or something, and it seems like they're about to have sex, and then Sayaka walks in on them.
I completely blanked on that.
Great. Also, the weightlifting scene where he seems to be masturbating on the balcony until he turns around and we see that he's doing curls.
With a tiny, tiny little dumbbell.
By the way, during the montage, he's doing all his workouts at the gym in the blue jacket, the blue blazer, and the red shirt.
And his knees are knocking, and eventually we see him face down with the barbell across his neck, and he can't get up. It is quite funny. All right, so she tries to seduce him. She's got it all on offer.
Yeah.
And yet, he can't. He can't do it.
Yeah.
And again, this is the chivalrous pervert.
Yeah.
Very much like the manga. He can't do it because he was... I watched this scene twice, and I watched it with Vannie, and she said it's heavily implied that because he was responsible for her for so long, he feels like he can't take advantage of her.
Right.
That she has something like Stockholm Syndrome or something like that, perhaps.
Right.
She says to him, I'm already 18.
Yes, that's right.
And she says there's a pun here in Cantonese that doesn't carry over into English. She says in Cantonese, I'm already big. Now, and in Cantonese that can mean I'm grown up, or it can also mean I'm big. I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
And it shocks him. It shocks him out of his lust.
Right.
Because he's like, I can't do this to this girl.
Okay, interesting. I think that about covers it. So did you find any trivia at all about this movie?
Very little. I can tell you how much it made.
Okay.
This took me So this film, its theatrical run only in Hong Kong, it looks like. So it doesn't seem like it had a greater Asian release the way Ciity Hunter did. Presumably because it lacked the star power of Jackie Chan. It ran from the very end of kind of like 1995 to the beginning of 1996. It made about 5.5 million Hong Kong dollars, which is less than US.
Yeah.
Compare that to, Ciity Hunter, which made like 30 million US.
Yeah.
It's not very... Or 30 million Hong Kong or something. Yeah, a fraction of what a Jackie Chan-led movie made 3 years earlier.
Right.
Yes. So I don't think this movie was very successful.
Yeah.
Although if you look up Michael Chow, at least in English, this is his big credit.
Okay.
It always says played Meng Bo in
But he was a
Mr.
writer-director, like he must have had some power.
He's had a long career and he's still acting in movies, even as recently as the last couple of years. But this was sort of like his big break, as it were, and it seems like it didn't do well, so...
Okay. Do you have an explanation for the scene where, when the cleavage lady comes into the bar, she introduces herself, on the TV is a James Bond movie, in which says, my name is Bond James Bond, and he says, my name is Chow Ben Chow. Do you have an explanation for why he called himself Ben Chow in that scene? Instead of Meng Bo?
I don't remember what my subtitles said at that point.
Well, he says in English.
Right.
He says, because he's listening to James Bond, he says in English, my name is Chow Ben Chow.
Right. Why would he say Ben Chow? Good question. I mean, he's clearly inspired by what he saw on the screen. Like, he just saw Roger Moore as James Bond.
Let me take a random guess that there was a James Bond parody, a Hong Kong parody called Ben Chow, and he was riffing on that.
Or maybe that's how James Bond is translated into Cantonese. I would have to ask Vannie. I would have to watch the scene again and ask Vannie what the meaning is. So stay tuned.
Okay. Okay.
No, that's pretty much it for trivia.
Okay. So I guess it's voting time.
Let's get into it.
Okay, Volume 3 for me was it's getting better and better.
Solid, I love this comic.
Just silly, weird.
I'm happy to just come back and read it again next week, and as many weeks as the listeners are willing to put up.
Okay, this movie, I didn't know what to make of it when I watched it yesterday.
Right.
After talking about it, I think it's better than I initially thought it was. I'm going to give it a yay.
I've definitely talked myself into a yay.
It's not for everybody, but if you watch Hong Kong movies anyway, I think it's pretty good.
This is a very solid Hong Kong movie, and missing a lot of the kind of broad humour that characterised the Wong Jing movie, Ciity Hunter.
Yeah.
This is a solid movie. Funny.
I think it has funny sequences. It has some great moments.
Yes.
I don't think it's great the whole way through, but for me it was enough for a yay.
Yeah.
Is what I would say.
I would agree.
Okay, adaptation.
As I've said, I think this is a yay for me.
Yeah. At
least in the sense that this, and I'm channeling my inner Kumar here, this is a yay in the sense that it is the most accurate, I think, of all of the movies that we've watched thus far in terms of how much it's like the comic.
Yeah.
There are some deviations, like with Umibozu being the partner rather than the antagonist / rival. But in terms of things like how he's sex obsessed, yet ultimately deeply, well, I don't know about deeply moral, but ultimately moral. The characters are all there.
Yeah.
And generally acting the way they would act.
Yeah.
We've got, like you said, it's strange that we read Volume 3 because... And we keep seeing this story pop up again and again where someone hires Ryu, the Ciity Hunter, to be the bodyguard for somebody with the hope that they will fall for one another and be more fitting son-in-law than whoever she's currently infatuated with / engaged to be married to.
Yeah.
It all feels very much like the manga. What do you think?
I actually think last week's was closer.
Sure.
In terms of silliness and superpowers and being an awesome fighter kind of stuff. I think this movie had moments, but I do think it's a yay for me. Mm-hmm. For all the reasons you mentioned, I do think it hits all the points. I wish there had been more stuff like the stack in the alley of bottles, that I wish it'd been a bit more adventurous in that direction. But overall, I think it's pretty close for live action. Again, I did feel like animation's probably the best way to go. But next week, I think, is going to be the real test. Because we've got a brand new Ciity Hunter movie on Netflix, which is not... It's supposed to be out today. We just checked before recording.
Well, it's out Thursday.
Is that Thursday the 25th is what all the websites are saying?
Thursday 25th. And is that Thursday 25th in the Southern Hemisphere, or is it Thursday the 25th... Well, sorry, in our time zone, or is it Thursday the 25th in the US?
Yeah, I don't know.
I would say probably we're going to get it some point tomorrow.
Okay. I certainly hope so. Otherwise, we'll have a real surprise episode next week.
Well, we'll probably do the Andy Lau one.
Oh, yeah. The Savior of the Soul. Yeah.
Stay tuned to find out. We just don't know what it'll be.
Yeah.
Please like.
Oh, yeah, all that stuff. Yeah, like, rate, review, subscribe.
Yep.
And when was it? That comes before next week's episode, doesn't it?
We
like, rate, review, subscribe. Please join us on Facebook. Please join our Patreon. It's patreon.com/comicbookmovieoblivion, all one word.
Yep.
We need it for the Netflix subscriptions.
Precisely.
To watch Ciity Hunter.
That's it. You don't want us to watch Savior of the Soul?
No. Join us on Facebook.
Yep. Follow us on Twitter. Send us an email.
Send us an email. Yes, in case we're getting stuff wrong. Because if we don't get angry emails about stuff we've got wrong, that means we know there is nobody listening.
That's right. Don't leave us in suspense.
Yeah.
Get in contact.